Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Nolan Garrett. Nolan, it's great to connect with you, CEO of TorchLight and Intrinium, and also best-selling author of F Me Running. You're a serial entrepreneur, and we'll get into a little bit of everything you're doing. Cybersecurity, I think, is something that is so top of mind today for so many companies, big and small. And every company in between. Talk a little bit about some of the things that we should be extra secure about as we kind of go through our day-to-day kind of casual, use of our passwords and credit cards and everything online.
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for having me. So yeah, as you're thinking about security as either an individual or a small business, the number one thing these days is the attack on passwords and weak credentials. That's what you're reading about in the news all of the time. That's what the outcome of these phishing attacks and these ransomware attacks are.
Yeah.
And so one of the easiest things that you can do to protect yourself is turn on that multi-factor authentication, that annoying prompt that you're probably getting in Google and Microsoft and everywhere else to set up your authenticator app. Set it up. It makes a huge difference. Microsoft recently released a report saying that they blocked 99.9% of attacks by simply having multi-factor or MFA turned on.
Okay. All right, good. And so if it's not popping up, for those who are maybe a little bit computer illiterate, how do you get to it?
Yeah, so in almost every platform, whether that's Google, Microsoft, what have you, under your account settings, in the place where you would go to change your password, there's typically an option for something called additional security or additional verification, and it will walk you through a process of either setting up an app to approve access into your account or receiving a text message code that you plug in when you log in to verify that you're you.
Okay, great. All right, good. All right, well, thanks for that tidbit. And so, cybersecurity, define that to how we as we sit here today, recording this live on November 9th, 2021, what is cybersecurity today?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Cybersecurity very much used to be about simply protecting server assets or some information that was on site. Now cyber is, very, very broad. It involves all information protection, including physical security, because you have to worry about that. And we've seen the evolution of attacks go from this would be interesting to figure out how to hack this company or to, find a vulnerability into the criminalization and the criminal organizations around extraction of money. And so when we look at ransomware and some of these, threats that we've really seen blow up, especially since COVID, it is really an operation of multiple or hundreds of people coordinating in tandem to try to get access to organizations and then demand that ransom and monetary payment. So it has definitely turned into crime, and it is something that is being, being sought by the FBI and all of the various world organizations that are looking to tamp down on this. They're trying to seek out these hackers, but it's a very, very difficult thing to do because they are all over the world. They're everywhere, and maybe they're in jurisdictions that really don't care so much if those activities are taking place.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So what can we do on top of the authentication that you're talking about earlier? What else can we do to protect ourselves?
Yeah. So, as an organization, when you're speaking about a business or an enterprise, one of the key things that you can do is monitor your environment for those kinds of attacks and be able to respond to them in real time. This is one of the biggest gaps that you see between, say, maybe the Fortune 500 or 1000 and the small business today, is that most small businesses have not implemented those technologies, and they don't really have a service provider that can help them monitor for those kinds of events. And what we found is, that the time to detection when a potential attack takes place, it can take 6 months or more before they choose to do something to that environment that makes it obvious that they're there. And so you need to be looking far, far, far in advance for the little signs that someone's trying to compromise your network or your data, and be blocking them there, not waiting for that big bomb moment when you no longer have access to your information.
Good feedback. So let's talk about, you are the CEO of a couple cybersecurity companies right now, and you're a serial entrepreneur. What does it take to be what does it take to be an entrepreneur today in this, kind of, I'm going to call COVID a post-COVID world, in kind of a post-COVID world, a hybrid world, a world where Pre-COVID studies were saying that by the year 2030, 80% of the jobs that exist in the year 2030 don't exist today, right? So, and I would imagine that a lot of those are going to be with technology that isn't even invented yet. And so, that's going to be driving so much throughout the next decade. And so what does an entrepreneur need to think today? I was interviewing somebody yesterday and they were saying that, when you have an idea, they had heard from someone, you have 7 days to execute, which seemed a little aggressive, but there is some kind of truth to that. There's that Verizon, I think it's the Verizon, commercial where the person gets the new phone and, or the new TV. And then they realize, oh, by the time they're bringing it into their house, a new G level is out. And so, talk about being an entrepreneur today, and how to build it and at the speed while not, getting rid of quality.
Yeah, that is an incredible challenge, especially in my industry right now. So, pre-COVID, we were already at 0% unemployment in cybersecurity. We were, desperately trying to develop, more staff and more availability of human resources who could, provide these services. You fast forward into this, kind of post-COVID world, and there is simply not enough people to be able to provide any of the services that are being purchased today, right? Like we are trading resources with other organizations trying to serve our customers because there just aren't enough people to hire with the expertise to be able to provide either consulting or architecture work. And so a big piece of what we're focused on, especially as TorchLight and this new brand that we're rolling out, is the people are super important. You absolutely have to have them, but we must augment them with some kind of AI and automation. Otherwise, we simply can't respond fast enough. And that's one of the other challenges that we're seeing, from the attacker side, is the attackers are automating their work towards us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they're that pace. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because I know that a lot of companies are using AI right now. Companies will say, hey, you can, click here and you can talk to our, you can text us, but the texts are using AI. I mean, you think you're talking to a human, but it's really guiding you via AI. A lot of the larger companies are using that, and so, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I had an issue with Verizon. I had to call. I ended up texting. They sent me exactly what was wrong, via AI. I'm assuming it was AI. I'm almost positive it was, but it's only going to get better. It's only going to get, faster and more intuitive. And so how do you keep up, right? Like where do you as a human being, where this is kind of what I'd like to talk about is, as a human being, what is our responsibility to grow our knowledge on a daily basis? I have my opinion. I'd like your opinion on a daily basis, because we can't even keep up with a computer. But what's our responsibility? What do we need to be doing every day?
Yeah, I think we have a very strong responsibility to be educating ourselves and getting access to resources so that we learn more about how these technologies work. But as you touch on there, they're complex and they're kind of opaque and monolithic. It's hard to understand exactly what's going on in the background, right? Yeah. And so education is a big piece of it. But I think we also need to think about how we're interacting with those kinds of tools and trying to understand whether or not they're truly providing the service and the value that we're looking for necessarily, for one, but also that they aren't just providing, let's say, blanket answers or standard responses that aren't appropriate to our situation. We have that a lot in our organization. We're using AI to look at thousands and millions of events of everything that's coming in from all of our clients. How do you know that AI has percolated up the most interesting events that are likely to cause a risk event for a client, right? And how do you validate that? Those are the key questions when it comes to any kind of automation, AI included.
Well, and I guess really to expand on my question is, as people, we need to bring and build our own value so we can show our value on top of what AI may replace us with moving forward. And there's generations that are not technically savvy at all, who do not have a job right now. What's their responsibility to learn technology, to grow a skill, to grow, their best practices of how they of how what do they need to learn today to even keep up to be valuable in the workspace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a big part of that is learning how to ask questions of technology and being an aggregator of that information to apply human intuition. You know what I mean? Like AI and automation, very,
Yeah.
very good at understanding what to do about something it's seen before, right? But when you need to apply this is new, AI struggles a bit with that and understanding what to do. And so I
Yeah.
think our roles as, say, information workers or whatever you want to call us, I think our roles are going to be to get data out of tools, look at the interesting information that AI has sifted out for us and given to us, and then you're applying human intuition to the actual decision points.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about human intuition for a minute. You know, uh, Emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, otherwise known as EQ and SQ. Those are really, really, in my opinion, important things to invest in yourself to grow those skill sets within yourself. Because I agree with you. It's as a business coach, one of the things I always talk about is if you want to double your business, double your asks. If you want to get better at something, double the amount of things that you ask for, because you have to push yourself to listen for the windows, to know what question to ask at the right time with the right cadence, etc. So I love what you're talking about, but tapping into our kind of getting out of our heads more into our heart's intuition and intuitiveness. I think you bring up a great point, and I love the way that you framed it. Speaking of education, let's talk about your book, right? The lessons I've learned from turning my mistakes into success. F me running. So for business. So tell the Think community, what is the reader going to get from reading this book?
Yeah, so it's really a breakdown of the experiences that I've had growing a business from very limited expertise. So I started Intrinium when I was 23 years old. So I had an incredible amount of experience running a business, as you can imagine at that age. No, I did not at all, right? So I struggled quite a bit. I touched the hot stove quite a bit, trying to understand how do you lead people? How do you grow teams? How do you select good partners? How do you understand what to take to market and what is just noise that is going to distract your team and distract your organization? And so this book is really, it's relatively short. It's 7-8 chapters. That's a breakdown of those major decisions and those, I guess, mistakes that I made and how I still survived them. Because I think that's the other key piece is a lot of us think you make a mistake and you're dead, right? You make a mistake and you can't go forward. And what I've learned is you make a mistake, you learn from it, and tomorrow's a new day. And this book really speaks to those things that I learned along the way.
What's the biggest mistake you made and the biggest lesson you learned from it?
Yeah, the biggest mistake I definitely made is I acquired an organization and brought on the wrong partner with that organization, and we did not have aligned values. And that's a really challenging situation to be in when you have two, top tier leaders in an organization that are pulling the rope different ways. It basically sidelined our growth for 5 years while me and that partner tried to figure out each other, and ultimately had to separate so that we could get the business back on track.
Yeah, I'm a big believer as a business coach. Alignment is a really important thing with business, with your partners, with your messaging, values, everything. So I love what you're talking about. All right, you ready for a quick speed round?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite book and why?
Favorite book, Still Winning from Jack Welch. I love the breakdown in his books about how to work with people, how to manage them, and how to show your appreciation for them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good. Thanks for sharing that. That's a good book. And reminding people to appreciate people is always a good one. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Best piece of wisdom I've ever received is if you get into another situation with a partner, create a touchstone that you can both go back to and say, this is what we agreed to begin with, and don't just try to feel it out every day as you go down that road together.
Yeah, I love that. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody needs to do if they made a mistake and they're stuck in that mistake is?
It's always ask for help. Always find someone else who's experienced something similar and get their advice on how they got through it.
Yeah, I find enough people don't ask for help enough, and they try to kind of figure it out. And sometimes even if they're 98% there, the solution is more simple than they think, and it's usually hidden in plain sight, and they just can't see it as clearly as someone who can see it from the outside. So appreciate that advice. Nolan, tell everybody how they can buy your book, where they can connect with you and learn more about you.
Yeah, you can find the book on Amazon. You can find me at nolangarrett.co, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Nolan, I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks so much. This was jam-packed with great things to think about, not only from a cybersecurity, but from a leadership standpoint, a business standpoint. And I appreciate your time. Think community, go out and buy Nolan's book. All right. Thanks, everybody. Nolan, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, John.